is, in its way, the poetry of logical ideas. This quote by Albert Einstein strives to describe the relationship between mathematics, literature, and how they both try to relate ideas into the world, life, and logic. Through personification and correspondence between various areas of knowledge, Emily Dickinson demonstrates how life lessons are taught through mathematics, with a theme of age, identity, and time. Before I go on to Emily Dickinson, I would like to talk about TOK. In TOK, we learned that mathematics is a form of imagination. It is a construct of the human mind, and it correlates with natural laws and axiomatic truths. So Emily Dickinson, even though she was in isolation for most of her life, was able to analyze this relationship and incorporate it into her poems effortlessly. So the first poem I'm going to talk about is Time Feels So Vast. Time feels so vast that were it not for an eternity, I fear me this circumference engross my affinity. To his exclusion who prepared by processes of size for this stupendous vision of his diameter. The main literary device that is used in this poem is personification. Now, circumference isn't a human. It isn't a human that can have human characteristics. Circumference is merely an idea or some inanimate object. So when Emily Dickinson says, I fear me this circumference engross my affinity, well, that's not possible because circumference cannot engross anything. The relationship that is portrayed through this poem relates to temporality and eternity. Temporality being something that limits or bounds a person's capabilities, and eternity being something that seems like it lasts forever. So in this poem, Emily Dickinson says vast. When you think of the word vast, you think of an expanse that seems like it's never going to end. It goes on forever. So that relates to eternity. When she says engross my affinity, she's saying that there's something limiting and something bounding. And that is how temporality works, because it's the relationship of something with time. And when she uses the word size, she's comparing this difference between eternity and temporality. So some of the words that relate to this relationship, the first one is circumference. Now, the mathematical definition of circumference is the distance around a circle, and it's the curved line which bounds a circle. So in this case, circumference is temporality, because anything that exists outside of the circumference of a circle has no relationship to the actual circle itself. The area is restricted, it's limited, it's bounded in that circumference. Therefore, circumference is temporality. The word diameter, in mathematical terms, is a line which passes through the center of a circle, and whose endpoints lie on the circle. In this poem, we see his diameter, and you can think of this as eternity. You can think of this in that way because the capitalization of the word his alludes to religion and alludes to God. And at this time period, religion was such a prominent part of everyone's life. So even though there was no physical entity of a God, his eternal presence, his eternal spirit existed throughout. So that's why his diameters can relate to eternity and something that never ends. So the mathematical aspect of this poem correlates to circumference, which we know is 2 times pi times radius. We can go further to say that diameter equals twice the radius. So we can make the substitution that circumference equals pi times diameter. Now let's talk about pi. Pi is a ratio between circumference and diameter. No matter what the size of the circle, the ratio of circumference to diameter will always equal pi. Pi as a number is an irrational number that never ends. It doesn't have any patterns or sequences. So if we isolate pi, we get pi equals circumference over diameter, or pi equals temporality over eternity. Pi in this case can be time, because there's no pattern or sequence to time. It goes on forever. One's life in relationship to time may end, but time goes on. And through this, we can see how much thought Emily Dickinson put into her poem. Because in the actual physical entity of the poem, we have circumference over diameter. So this relationship exists not only in her words, but in her actual written form of this poem. So what does this say about the relationship of temporality and eternity? Well, this goes with time. Time rules all of life. Too much time can feel eternal. Too little time can feel like temporality. And no time at all can mean death. The next poem I go to is I Had a Daily Bliss. I had a daily bliss, I half indifferent view. Till sudden I perceived it stir, it grew as I pursued. Till when around a height, it wasted from my sight, increased beyond my utmost scope, I learned to estimate. So once again, the main literary device that is used is personification. In this case, she is personifying bliss. Bliss is not something that can have a characteristic that a human has. Rather, it's a characteristic that humans experience. Bliss is a feeling, it's a state of mind, it's an emotion. So therefore, when she says, till sudden I perceived it stir, it grew as I pursued, well, bliss cannot actually grow. The feeling of bliss can grow, but not bliss in itself. So the overall message of this poem is saying that as one perceives and as one goes after happiness, it becomes harder for them to attain. And it directly correlates to this theme of age and identity. It shows that how as one begins to lose, their age is increasing. And this can be a loss of happiness, a loss of innocence, a loss of memory. It can be a loss of virtually anything as one grows. And this loss seems to become so prominent in the speaker's life that it increased beyond my utmost scope, and I learned to estimate. So she is compensating for this loss. She doesn't know how to find the same happiness. So instead, she's using maybe past experiences and estimating and kind of figuring out what she can do to reach that same time of bliss, that same time of happiness. So the mathematics in this one goes with inverse functions. As many of us know, an inverse function is when one value increases, the other decreases, or when one decreases, the other increases. And we can look at inverse functions with the formula of y equals k over x. K being the constant, and in this case we'll call it life. X being age, and y being bliss or happiness. So what does this correlation really say? Well, if we look at x, so if x is age and it's closer to 0, it means you're in your younger ages of life. So how is y represented? Well, y is represented as a larger number. What happens when x increases? As x is increasing, y is decreasing. So if we put actual numbers into this formula, we get, let's say if we use 5. So x equals 5, age is 5. There's a child that is 5 years old. What does y equal? 1 over 5. However, the same child becomes 20. X is 20. What is y? 1 over 20. So we're seeing how as age is increasing, this blissfulness, this journey to find happiness is decreasing. It's decreasing due to all of these new ideas of innocence. So when you're a child, you have so much innocence, you have so much purity. However, the older you get and the more temptations you find yourself dealing with, your innocence drops. However, this drop of innocence becomes more gradual. It becomes something that is accepted and it's common. So this overall gradual decrease, this overall gradual loss of innocence happens as age is increasing. How does this relate to the past and the future? Well, when one is in fear of the future, they compensate and estimate for ideas of the past. They think of their past experiences and what they've already gone through that brought them happiness in order to feel that same happiness, even though they can't experience it in the present time. The last poem I'm going to talk about is one we did in class, Success is Counted Sweetest. The words that are in blue relate to positive connotations which emphasize success, and the words that are in green are negative connotations which emphasize failure. So some of the words that emphasize success are sweetest, nectar, purple host, victory, and triumph. Purple host in this case is actually the Union Army during the Civil War. The negative connotations are in green, and some of them are defeated, dying, strained, and agonized. So how does this poem relate to the previous one of I Had a Daily Bliss? Well, it has that same inverse relationship. The less one achieves success, the greater the desire to achieve it. So, X would be how much one wants to achieve this success, how much one wants to accomplish in their life. And based on that, you can see how much they will actually achieve it. So if there's someone that fails often, they will want to achieve success more. And this is in her first two lines itself. Success is counted sweetest by those who near succeed. And in her second stanza, she goes on to say, not one of all the purple host who took the flag today can tell the definition so clear of victory. Not one of the members of the Union Army who defeated the Confederate Army in the Civil War knows the true meaning of success, because in order to know that meaning, you have to fail. So all of these examples portray that Emily Dickinson incorporates math into all of her work, and not just through patterns and sequences. It's also through words and all of these different functions that describe the whole world. So I'm going to go back to this quote that I stated earlier. Pure mathematics is, in its way, the poetry of logical ideas. Based on this quote, I can say that mathematics is like silent poetry. Silent in that it does not use words or phrases, but similar to poetry in that they both strive to explain the world through pure aesthetics. Oh.